Bipolarism. If we possessed memory of each swing of the pendulum and of any thoughts and feelings of opposites, then would we be less identified? That indeed is the question, as we remember only one side or the other, not both together. For example, when we are negative, we tend to remember only unpleasant things, and vice versa. It is possible to observe how things swing between opposites in our intellectual center and in our emotional center, also with instinctive center. So we can ask ourselves here, if we have taken in impressions of one another from a negative swing, have we then attempted to remember any opposite impressions that we may at other times have collected? Remember, we must bring the opposites together consciously. For this to happen, though, we need a work memory, a new kind of memory, arising through self-observation. Don't get confused by these terms, pendulum and opposites. We already know, in a way, that everything swings to and fro inside of us, between hope and despair, between liking and disliking, between feeling cheerful and feeling depressed, between thinking that something is true and thinking that it is not true. Psychology today favors the term bipolarism and medicates for it. However, all these are pendulum swings between opposites, going in different directions always, all with their different times like different clocks or different time zones. We would think it strange, therefore, when told that there has to be only one clock eventually, instead of these many hundreds of clocks all keeping different times. Every thought or feeling that comes into consciousness has an opposite, and when we identify with the thought or feeling, we fall under its power, and so are on the pendulum, insensibly. Without our knowing how or even remembering when this happened, we find ourselves having the opposite thought or opposite feeling without seeing any contradiction in that. This is just where our unconsciousness lies, our living state of sleep, in which we do not see any contradictions. P.D. Ouspensky once said that when the pendulum is swinging down, it is going fastest, when it passes the middle point, and then as it rises on the other side, it goes slower and slower until it reverses its movement. He said, "We are not quick enough to feel the movement because we work with too slow a hydrogen, and so are conscious, in the ordinary sense, only at the two opposite ends." It is a wonderful thing indeed when we begin to understand that one need not go with their mechanically arising thoughts and feelings. We must, it has been said, learn to rule our minds, which obviously takes a long time, a great deal of work and self-observation. Some of us, when first hearing this, do not imagine for a moment that it applies to ourselves. We scoff and assume that we rule our minds absolutely. However, when someone begins to observe themselves and becomes interested in their self-observation, they soon realize, of course, that they rule nothing within the psychological world of the self. In this invisible world in which each one of us really lives, we control absolutely nothing. Our thoughts come to us we know not how. Sometimes they come in swarms. The strange thing is that we take them as our own thoughts and play them on our own fiddle, as if it were all true. It's difficult to describe the taking of thoughts as our own, just as we cannot describe the miracle of realizing that they are not oneself, and so need not be made our own, that we need not believe them, that we need not go with them, that we don't have to take them as true, that any thought of any kind can come to us at any moment. Naturally, in the latter case, if you are not awake, just notice what being awake really means. Then the thought will convince you. It will be your way of thinking for that moment, and this is exactly what we have to separate from through non-identifying almost continually. There is a phrase in this work, A person is listening to their thoughts. However, it may not be entirely true because we do not listen to our thoughts, but are them. Sometimes, when we become horrified at what we are thinking, we stop. However, as a rule, these thoughts come in by themselves and play our tune, so we think it is ourselves, that it's our music. The whole position has to be reversed. To be like that is just to be a machine in which our mind rules us and thoughts make us think them. You have a thought, "Oh, how tired I am," or "how hard my life is," something along those lines. Do we possess sufficient inner observation? Have we cleared and cultivated a large enough space in our mind through the practice of inner attention? Then put a thick hedge around it and a gate so that we can hear the click of the gate and watch this daring thought coming up the driveway, all ready to say, "Oh, how tired I am." Once we let it in just a little, then every thought gets hold of us and rings us, takes our life force, makes us react, talk, behave, and feel in a certain way. And then, satisfied with having dined off our blood and satiated itself, it retires for a time. Returning to the pendulum, we will be unable to bring opposite thoughts and feelings together consciously unless we have distinct memories of them recorded in our work memory. That is the new memory that arises in us all when we begin to practice a life of self-observation, when we begin to live our lives more consciously, not only in public with other people, but more importantly when we are alone with ourselves in the dark of night. Remember that we appreciate certain things in a person and have often done so. However, when we are negative with that person, we can only mechanically remember negative things about them. The merging of these two psychic acts, the two memories, is working not between yes or no, but between both yes and no. If one does this gradually, then we do not swing so far in either liking or disliking, knowing how treacherous the country is beyond, and how asleep that we become if we allow ourselves to backslide into that state. This is implied about not going too far one way or the other, and requires inner awareness, a certain inner alertness. It makes everything much more intense. One sees what they have to do, which is not to be confused with indifference. A conscious restraining of the pendulum is utterly different from a state of indifference, because one is conscious and the other mechanical. There are many parables and images about this scattered throughout esoteric literature, such as driving two powerful horses, one black and one white, then restraining them in the correct proportion, along with other metaphors. If we do not go with a thought, then we are free from it for the time being. The force that might otherwise have gone into it does not go hither. In what direction should the force go? Self-observation, it is often said, should eventually be carried out with regard to self-remembering, where in essence it is taught first in this work. The point being that the force that you withdraw from one or the other side of any opposites should pass in the direction of real I. We attempt to remember ourselves because we have no real I. No one can reach the experience of real I, save in an illegitimate way, through stimulants and substance abuse, for which we have to pay afterward, without a certain emotional state that we can simply call evaluation of the work. When a person works without any real individual feeling, without any sense of wonder, then that person's work will be on too low a level. It will extend from very small eyes in the minor parts of centers, which naturally cannot make contact with higher centers or real I. Remember that the force that you withdraw from one or the other side of any opposites should pass in the direction of real I. We attempt to remember ourselves because we have no real I. No one can reach the experience of real I, save in an illegitimate way, through stimulants and substance abuse, for which we have to pay afterward. without a certain emotional state that we can simply call evaluation of the work. When a person works without any real individual feeling, without any sense of wonder, then that person's work will be on too low a level. It will extend from very small eyes in the minor parts of centers, which naturally cannot make contact with higher centers or real eye. So if a person works only on such a level, there will be nothing real and nothing new enters their understanding, because the force that has been gained from non-identifying with inner states has nowhere to go to, and then may simply flood back. We cannot remember ourselves unless we have a sense of something greater. For instance, if we do not believe in greater mind, then we cannot maze ourselves emotionally to all the concepts of work which concerns the conscious circle of humanity. The level of awakening, the level of objective consciousness, the attainment of real eye, and diagrams such as the ray of creation, among others, may mean little to us at all. It is of course unfortunate when a person is in this state or working erratically from very small parts of centers, controlled by partially developed groups of eyes. Sometimes this happens because the individual might not have acquired sufficient background, has not read or reflected enough upon the struggle of esoteric teaching with mechanical humanity. This, however, belongs to another commentary about valuation and, what is most important to our worldview, what we value most in life, which we do not notice and do not suspect.